Becca was ready to spend her whole summer at the family cabin and her winters down south to avoid the cold Canadian winters. However, her husband Jim was still working and had no plans of slowing down. Does this sound familiar to you? It might be by chance, but I'm finding this situation is coming up more and more in my conversation with retirees. You might be thinking to yourself, there's nothing wrong with this. Jim must enjoy his work, so why retire? Well, this wasn't the case. Jim was actually feeling very stressed about his job with all the responsibilities and the deadlines that he had to meet, so he wasn't exactly enjoying himself. So why keep working? I've found that there are surface level reasons that need to be addressed before we can get to the true reason that someone wants to keep working. So in Jim's case, he wanted to keep working because he wanted to make sure that their retirement was taken care of and that they would have enough money to do the things that they want to do without ever having to stress about every dollar that they spent. So we put together a retirement plan, and based on our projections, their plan was over 150% funded, which meant that they had more money than they would need to meet their retirement expenses, and they'd also be leaving an estate of over $4 million. Safe to say they had lots of wiggle room. Now, what if our assumptions are wrong? Jim was definitely right to ask this question because whenever we're putting together projections, we have to make assumptions on things like inflation and rates of return. So in our initial analysis, we were using a rate of inflation of 2.5% and a rate of return on Jim and Becca's portfolio of 5%. But I certainly don't have a crystal ball, so what if I'm wrong? We ran Becca and Jim's plan through a what-if scenario. What if inflation is 2% higher than we had projected? And what if the rate of return on their portfolio is only 3% instead of the original 5% that we had assumed? So in this case, their plan is still over 100% funded, and they'd still be leaving an estate of over $1 million. By addressing Jim's surface level reasons for wanting to work, we were able to discover the true reason that he didn't want to retire. Jim hadn't realized it until that very moment, but he now understood that his reason for wanting to work had nothing to do with money. He felt that if he retired, he would lose his sense of purpose. After a deep conversation with Becca, Jim realized that his worth was not tied to his job. He could find purpose in other things such as volunteering and being a greater presence in the lives of his grandkids. All this to say, don't oversave for retirement. Now, don't get me wrong, oversaving is way better than undersaving, but for every year that you put off retirement, it's another year that you'll never get back. If there's one thing that I've learned from working with retirees is that time is our most valuable resource. I've never heard anyone say, I wish I would have worked a few extra years, but I've heard on countless times people tell me that they wish they would have retired sooner to do the things on their bucket list while they still had their health and energy to do it. If you want to make sure that your retirement is on track, check us out at transcanadawealthmanagement.com.